Alright, hello guys, how's it going? In today's video, we're going to make our first video about that Christmas snowstorm coming up. This is going to be solely about that one. Now, before I get started with this video, though, I would ask that you do subscribe if you do like weather-related content, and also make sure to share this video with your friends, family, and social media. I would also highly recommend that you check out our very exciting store in the description and the pinned comment down below, and then also our very exciting Patreon page where I'm going to be making a post about a snowstorm for the Pacific Northwest there on our Patreon page, so you can check that out in the description and the pinned comment down below. It's cheaper than the price of a coffee, and you can always cancel. Now, for today's comment of the day, I want to know, how major do you think this Christmas snowstorm could potentially be, and where do you think it will be the most major? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll be picking one of those for tomorrow's video. Now, if you saw from the thumbnail and from the title, you could see that probably this has a good chance to potentially be major. I am eyeballing the chance for some lake effect enhancement that could lead to some areas seeing over a foot of snow. We're eyeballing that potential, but it's only a potential at this point. This could be a more minor system. We're pretty far out, so we're going to be watching it closely. We're starting things out up there for the Pacific Northwest. You can see there is that snowstorm, and that's kind of the beginning of the Christmas snowstorm for the East, and that's what our Patreon post is going to be about. Again, you can check that out in the description and the pinned comment down below. Let's move it on towards about, well, that was around the 22nd in the morning hour. This is the 23rd in the afternoon, maybe about 1 p.m., the day before Christmas Eve. And as you can see, we have some snowfall going on down there for the southern Rockies and portions of the plains. That is the beginning of our Christmas potential snowstorm. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to move on where this is really all going to come together. It's going to bring some snowfall to the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and eventually the eastern United States as well. Alright, now as you can see, we're at Christmas Eve now by about maybe 7 a.m. there on Christmas Eve. You can see we have a lot of precipitation associated with this cold front along I would say it's around the eastern United States. It's entering the eastern half of the United States by this point. Potential for some severe weather for Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas. I would say even the Gulf, pretty much the entirety of all the Gulf states, and even up into some of the southeastern United States as well. There is some potential. We'll be watching that closely. Anytime there's a lot of warm temperatures followed by a strong cold front, you're watching for that potential for severe weather. So we will watch that closely. We can see there is some snowfall going on for Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, potentially Indiana, not really yet, Michigan, Wisconsin. This could change, obviously. The GFS isn't showing as much of that Ohio Valley and Great Lakes snowfall, so we will watch this closely. We're still 4 days out until the start of this one. There's going to be many updates from this point till that point. And really, with these snowstorms, the models have had to shift in a certain direction. They've shifted away from what they were originally calling to a little bit of a different location. So we can anticipate that this will likely shift around multiple times before we finalize what we really think is going to happen at the end of the day. So take this with a major grain of salt. We are going to track this storm. We know it's probably going to be in this general area, but there's obviously many factors that could change in different ways that we can't really predict at this point. That's how confusing it can get. What we're going to do is we're going to move on. We're going to move on towards about 1 p.m. on Thursday, which again is Christmas Eve, where that snowfall is just going to move a little bit further east. We're going to continue to track that moving forward. Now, as the storm moves into the east, we're going to zoom into the east. Again, look at that heavier precipitation down there for the Gulf states. That is some of that potential severe weather I'm eyeballing. At this point, it appears we're going to have high amounts of shear, but low amounts of cape, which means usually it's a wind-driven event, potential for some damaging winds, potential for some tornadoes, but not really a ton of potential for hail or anything like that. So it's going to be an interesting thing to track, and I'm going to be watching that closely for you guys. But I want to draw your attention further north. We see some snowfall going on for Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan. Again, that is pretty much bound to change, I would say, literally. I think that is likely going to look different once we get there. The models have been awful this year, which they have been pretty much regressing for the past 3 or 4 years, getting worse every single year, which is definitely not what you want to see. But at this point, when you're looking at 5 days out, 6 days out, it is a really useful tool at least to see if there will be a storm or won't be a storm. But the location is really just bound to look different at this point. By the time we reach maybe about the very early morning hours here on Christmas Day, I would say probably 4 a.m. here, we see some moderate snowfall going on for Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina, West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, with some ice mixing in. Even some snow showers possible for northern Alabama, northern Georgia. That trough you can see that's moving in with those blue lines indicating those very cold masses of air there. It's going to be definitely sufficient for snow in areas that definitely usually do not anticipate to see any. Very, very interesting setup we have here. And by the time we reach kind of more of the afternoon hour of Friday here, so Christmas Day, we can see some pretty moderate snow going on for Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York. Again, this is definitely bound to change. As we reach about 7 p.m. on Christmas Day, it's getting a bit heavier for Pennsylvania. This model certainly thinks we have an actual snowstorm to anticipate, a little bit more of an interior one than we've been seeing actually. And that would be, again, kind of the evening hour around dinner time there on Christmas Day. Some heavier snowfall going on. And what we're going to do is we're going to move on towards the tail end of this system, take a look at some of those temperatures, and then we're going to take a look at what the GFS has to say as well. And then we're pretty much just going to close out the video. We're actually going to take a look at the total snowfall according to these models at the end of the video as well, though. So stay tuned for all of that. Now, here's those temperatures, actually, by the time we're reaching about 7 p.m. on Christmas. Look at those temperatures there. Absolutely frigid. The interesting thing here, the most interesting thing, is that it's pretty much just as cold in Miami as it is in northern Maine there, which is absolutely extraordinary. I think that's a very interesting statistic there, and it's much warmer than Miami there in Boston. That's just a very interesting temperature pattern we have setting up here. Nevertheless, interior regions are very, very frigid at this point for still being kind of daytime. That is actually pretty impressive temperatures. Mid to lower 20s basically for a lot of the more interior regions there. Very, very frigid Christmas coming up here. And then by the time we reach about 1 a.m. here on Saturday, so that's going to be the day after Christmas, we're seeing still some moderate to heavy snowfall for Pennsylvania and New York. And this is when the lake enhancement begins. We see that kind of wrap around itself. And really, we're going to see a lot of snowfall get tacked on if that was to occur that way. Again, the total snowfall amount's coming up at the end of the video. Let's just take a look at what the GFS has for this storm. Again, for the Ohio Valley in the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes, it has much, much less snowfall there. But as we move on towards about 1 p.m. here on Thursday, December 24th, you can see it actually has some pretty moderate to heavy snowfall going on basically from Tennessee, North Carolina, up through Virginia, Kentucky, West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York. But again, I want to remind you, this is certainly bound to change significantly over the next 4 days until this storm begins. We could see this further east, further north, further south, further west. We've seen this with pretty much every single snowstorm I've been covering on these model guidance videos over my channel this entire winter. We've watched it together shift north, 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 usually north, but sometimes in different directions. So I want to remind you of that fact that this is a model guidance update, and I'm only showing you what the models are showing. I don't really have an opinion yet on what this storm is going to do. So the models are bound to certainly change. This is certainly not a forecast. That's a misconception that happens a lot during my videos that are just model guidance updates. A lot of people say you were forecasting this to happen and it did not, but it was really just a model showing one thing, not me saying something was going to happen. All right. And then by the time we reach about maybe 8 p.m. there on Christmas Eve night, we see significant snowfall going on from Virginia up through West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York. This one's a little bit further east than the European model. A lot of ice going on there for the areas closer to the low pressure system. Certainly an interesting situation we have setting up here. What we're going to do is we're going to move on. We're going to move on towards the tail end of this storm, and then we're going to take a look at those total snowfall amounts to according to multiple models there. Then we're going to close out the video. Now, by the time we reach about 11 p.m. there on Christmas Eve night, we can see that there is still a lot of significant icing going on around that low pressure system, which on this model is located mostly around New York. If that southern one was to be the dominant one, which seems unlikely at this point considering how close we are, we would have a major snowstorm basically for the entire mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, but it's that northern one that's dominant, and that really doesn't set up for a massive snowstorm near the coast. It sets up for more of an interior snowstorm. So that's the reason why we're taking a look at that happening. If that low pressure system up there did not exist, it would be a very, very different story here. But nevertheless, again, we have significant icing going on, significant snowfall the further interior you go. Both of these models agree on that fact. Let's just go ahead and move on towards about maybe about 2 a.m. here on Friday, December 25th, Christmas Day. Again, significant icing and snowfall still going on. By the time we reach a few hours later, same exact story. Here's the actual temperatures according to this model. So it completely agrees that, and again, this is kind of the morning hours on Christmas according to this model. Miami is basically the same temperature as Maine up there as well on this model. So they certainly agree on that. A lot of single digits going on there on Christmas Eve night. A very frigid night indeed is expected. By the time we reach the afternoon hour of Christmas, that storm has moved out, but really we're seeing a ton of lake effect snow possible for Christmas Day in Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, according to this model, and actually some pretty widespread snow showers around for significant amounts of states. Actually, I see some there for Vermont, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine, even some there for North Carolina, even some there for Tennessee as well, West Virginia. So flakes will certainly be flying there on Christmas Day. Let's move on and take a look at the European model's total snowfall through a couple days after Christmas. And as you can see, if you're anywhere in the grays, you're about a dusting. If anything, in the blues, you're at about an inch to a few inches. In the purples, we're taking a look at about 6 to 10 inches of snow. In the pinks, we're taking a look at about 10 to 20 inches of snow. And then in those more pastel blue colors, kind of like a teal, that's where you're 20 inches plus. So you're seeing some of that for Pennsylvania and New York. I think that's definitely a little overblown here. At this point, I'm ready to say that it's likely some areas will possibly see 10 inches plus. We're a few days out still. I'm not comfortable really calling for anything necessarily, but I do think a major snowstorm is certainly possible. Let's move on to that GFS model, and it certainly agrees it's a little more widespread with those higher amounts. West Virginia up through most of Pennsylvania, a lot of Ohio as well, and then a lot of upstate New York. You could tell that the lakes are playing a massive role in how much snowfall is occurring here, because right near the lakes there, we see significantly more snowfall than surrounding regions. Anyway, for today's comment of the day, I asked you guys, when do you think our next major snowstorm will be? And Ben Dean said, I think the next big snowstorm could be around Christmas Eve / Christmas Day morning, because the models are consistent with the snowstorm around that time. And I agree, it's certainly possible at this point that will be our next major snowstorm. Anyway, for today's patron highlight of the day, I want to thank you all for supporting the channel, but especially our platinum patrons: Sebastian Tao, John Bembenek, Justin Quantrill, James Wade, Dovie Nagel, Alan Belemo, Adam S., Larry LePan, Donna Carnes, Cameron Marshall, and Aidan Mattis. And also our diamond patrons: Bill Roberts, Alan Cherry, Marcus Connolly, Noah Harley, Michael Codalessa, Michael Buell, Terry Curtis, Catbite, Charles Stinnett, Kellen Manhart, It's Jay, Cindy Klein, Alicia Davis, and Mark J. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel and being patrons. If you would like to end up on our patron end screen here, you can do so by joining our very exciting Patreon page in the description and the pinned comment down below. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Again, be sure to share it with your friends, family, and social media. I will see you guys in the next video.